Hi, I'm Glenn Gross, president of NJBN, New Jersey Business Networking Group, and we're a networking group comprised of business owners, sales professionals, associates working together to help enhance and enrich our businesses with leads, experience, education pieces, things that can help us grow. The event that we're running today was about the disaster that happened and how to prepare your business for that disaster or the one that's coming in the future. Maria Rini is our event coordinator, and she can go over the event even a little bit more detailed.
So today we were privileged to have with us Tom Metzler, who's the Borough Manager for Fair Lawn, also formerly with FEMA. And our panel of experts comes from within our own ranks. We've got an IT expert, telephone systems expert, hazardous materials expert, and an insurance consultant.
And they'll be talking about how to prepare your business, take steps for precautions prior to a storm, and then what happens after the storm hits, what to do, and how to get back up and running as quickly and as painlessly as possible.
Require a pen. This is going to be an interactive activity today. All right. A little bit about myself. I am the borough manager here in Fair Lawn. As such, under our form of government, I'm the chief executive officer of the borough. But in what appears to be another life, I am also a federally certified emergency planner. Okay. On the one side of the card, here's the question. It's a really simple one. Would a loss of business have an adverse effect on your personal life as a business owner? It's a yes or no. Very simple. Write it down because you're not going to be able to change the answers later. Okay, and then directly under that, on the same side of the card, I would like you to identify those two items that you see as the greatest threat to you or the greatest concern to you as a business owner to get your business up and running following an event. How many of you have a written plan in place that identifies your vulnerabilities and how you would react and how you would expect your employees to react should there be an adverse effect to your business which affected your personal life? By a show of hands, does anyone? There's one. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, what I'd like to ask you are what type of concerns do you have as a business owner? What did you put down as the two top things that you're concerned about? Yes, ma'am.
Safety and security.
Safety and security, okay.
Want to feel safe. Does that make sense?
Yes, bless your soul, you could have been a plant. The number one failure is a plan is developed looking at this crowd based on one hand coming up saying that it's a written plan, okay, is that perhaps you as an individual have thought this through in your mind and said, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. Well, isn't that making an assumption that you were in New Jersey when the storm came through and the power went out and now you're not able to communicate with your office and now you have 25 employees sitting there going, what are we supposed to do? So let's talk about some of the things that you should be thinking about. Your payroll records. And let me tell you a little story about Fair Lawn, because as much as we pride ourselves on how well our emergency plans are written, I came back as the borough manager here in January of last year. I asked where we keep our backup records, and to my dismay, our records are backed up once every 29 days and are stored next door. Grossly inadequate. A week before Sandy came ashore, we were telling our personnel that they should plan for being without power for up to 2 weeks. How did we know that? Because that was the model that the National Hurricane Service had predicted years before. So we knew that. We never anticipated that we would, in the tri-state area, that we would encounter the problems of getting diesel fuel. You know, I mean, we keep 8,000 gallon tanks, and we were down to 200 gallons at one point, and we're receiving fuel from a military source. The point that I want to leave you with is it's not enough just to write a plan. You have to practice it. You have to make sure your employees and your staff know what it is, and you need to make sure that you have redundancies built into it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I like to do a little survey every once in a while, because when the power does go out and you have a hurricane, you want to think about, well, where does all that power come from? And I'm really amazed how people think and where they think the power comes from. Just as a poll, how many people think that we have here in New Jersey that we are supplied for electricity more than 20% nuclear? Who would raise their hand on more than 20%? Who would raise their hand more than 30%? I went to 30%. Or 40%. Nuclear power. Okay? It's almost 50% nuclear power in Jersey. So that's the kind of power you're talking about. Alternative technology doesn't have that kind of power. Windmills, solar, those kinds of things are really great, but they're years and years away and research dollars away from ever really making a dent into what nuclear can do. Again, back to the disaster stuff, one of the things that you can do, one of the things that we advertised for this seminar is what you can do to avoid the catastrophe. And one of the things you could do is move your equipment. If you have the opportunity, if you have the enough time that you've been warned and you can do it, move your car to a higher ground, move your boats, if you've got the opportunity to do it, move and secure above ground tanks. Those are kind of the things that made some of the biggest messes that we're cleaning up right now. The other thing that you can do to avoid an issue is within 36 hours, is the rule of thumb, pump the water from your basements. After 36 hours is the kind of the rule of thumb when mold starts to really take hold of your roof. And that's when you want to, if you cannot pump the water away, you want to leave. When you really need a mold have a mold situation or mold infestation, you can pretty much kind of tell. They have some definitions, but they are not perfect because it's an imperfect world. Mold is also everywhere. It's ubiquitous. There's mold in this room, but don't run. It's all okay. We're used to it. It's been here for millions of years. But if you do have a more serious situation, that's when we come in, we do mold services, and we clean it up a little bit different with negative air machines. We clean the air, we clean all of the surfaces. It's very expensive, and but effective, and it can only be effective if the water has been dried up, if you fix the leak. If the basement's going to keep coming in with water, you've got to put some more engineering controls in the basement in order for it to be effective in cleaning up. Thank you.
And now we're going to have Scott Wolff from Premier Risk Management.
I love this stuff. Risk management, disaster recovery, business continuity, awesome. I'm Scott Wolff. I'm with Premier Risk Management. I'm a partner in the firm, and we are independent insurance and risk management consultants. What I mean by that is we do not sell any insurance products whatsoever. So we come at it looking at companies' exposures to risk from a independent and objective vantage point, and strictly with an eye toward insurance recovery and mitigation and cost reduction. So in light of what has just occurred in this area, we all know many businesses that have been affected by Superstorm Sandy. And a lot of those businesses, unfortunately, for one reason or another, will never reopen. Or they just won't have the capital or the resources to open or to continue their businesses a couple of years from now. Companies must evaluate and assessed what their true risks and exposures are. Because without first identifying true risks and exposures, there's no way that you can even figure out how to transfer that risk either to another party or transfer it to an insurance company. And many times on the property casualty side of things, brokers, when they come into the equation, and it's no fault of their own, is they all have good intentions to do the right thing for their clients, but it's the business model that doesn't help the process, and it's the mentality of the business owner, quite frankly, because nobody likes to pay those insurance premiums, but without really fully understanding what your exposures are, as Tom had mentioned, in detail and in depth and thinking outside the box, there's no possible way that your insurance policy is going to respond to maybe what your expectations are. And as a business owner, it's definitely incumbent upon you to understand how that policy is going to respond in a claim scenario, because you should really look at that policy as your form of recovery after a loss. And if that policy, if you're not able to recover or make recoveries from that insurance policy, what good was the premium that you spent in the first place? In terms of buying insurance, when you have disaster recovery programs in place, when you have employee handbooks in place, when you have loss control and safety programs in place, that tells a great story about your business, and a story that underwriters at insurance companies like to hear. And when you have those kinds of good stories, you'll be able to purchase insurance for probably a lot less than you otherwise would if you didn't have all those plans and programs in place to mitigate losses that the insurance companies know you're going to have eventually. You're informed, you know what your risks are, you know what your policies say, you know what you want them to say. And so now you're an informed and educated buyer of a product instead of just being sold something. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Richard Luna from Protecting Harbor.
I just can't stand still, so you'll have to forgive me. Disaster is paramount to operating a business. That's been the direct experience that we've had. We manage the IT for a little over 75 companies from Hartford, Connecticut down to Deal, New Jersey. The organizations that survive through disasters are the ones that take disaster recovery procedures as a key business tool. The businesses that have the most success are ones that understand that disaster recovery is a key into your business process and your business model. And the more you understand where your vulnerabilities are in your model, the more you're ferreting out your inefficiencies. But assembling a disaster plan makes you think about the problem. And it makes you then say, okay, if we had a rogue employee and he deleted or she deleted everything, what is our process? Let's do it. Let's shut that piece of equipment off and let's restore it from backup and let's see what happens. All of that goes into disaster planning, because what typically happens in a disaster is you forget the steps. And that's why a disaster plan is really good, because it gives you an opportunity to slow things down in a controlled way and say, what can we live without? What do we absolutely need to continue to function? During Sandy, we had to manage a bank. They had no internet, no power. They were fine when the market was closed. The day it opened, they had to be fully functional. Grabbed their server, put it in our office, which had power and had internet. They went into a hotel room, a large conference room, set up a bunch of terminals. They were up and running fully. That kind of manipulation, or that kind of ability to recover and manage through a disaster, is only because they were down to one box, which you literally could grab and pick up. The smaller the organization, the easier it is to do that, the larger the organization. However, that said, This bank, they had one box to make sure that backups are running, make sure security. So even though they're a pretty good-sized organization, the number of physical entities really does matter, regardless of the size. Marie, by the way, Marie did a phenomenal job with this event, and I just want to say thank you. But she wanted me to talk about generators, and the biggest thing about generators is to, and this goes along with IT, what's important and preparing power-wise for what's important. When you have a generator, there's a transfer switch. Transfer switch shuts off power, and then internal power, or a generator, turns on and provides the power to light up whatever has been configured to work. You've got to have a transfer switch, whether it's automatic or manual. Otherwise, you're going to send power into the grid, and when the grid turns back on, you're going to blow something up. Either your own generator or the poles out on the street. But basically, your cost in the generator is going to be the size, the scope. The diesel ones are pretty cool. They actually have built-in diesel tanks that you don't have to get any zoning permits as long as they'll tolerate a generator within the zoning. You don't need to bury a tank. It's all part of the actual generator itself. So the real small ones are gas-driven. The next step up are diesel, and the ones up above that are natural gas. There are smaller ones that are natural gas as well, but typically the real big ones are going to be diesel or large-scale natural gas. That's it.
Next up, DeGennaro from MPD Telecommunications.
Thanks, Maria. I think we need a 7th extraction. All right, we're down to the last presentation. I'm going to talk today about cloud-based phone systems and call centers. Is everybody here familiar with a cloud-based or hosted phone system? I see some hands. Okay, few people. To give a definition, a premises-based phone system is any phone system where the intelligence of the system sits in your office. You purchase it, you put it on the wall, you wire it out to all your phones, and you manage it and use it that way. Some examples are Avaya, Cisco, Toshiba, Panasonic, all familiar, I'm sure. A hosted system or a cloud system takes that intelligence and puts it out at a data center. With a cloud-based phone system, if we take the system out of your building, in a disaster scenario like Sandy, the main advantage is when I call you, the processing of that call could be in Chicago, could be in Philadelphia, it could be in Salt Lake City, Utah. So the likelihood of that disaster affecting that area and taking down that data center is very, very low. Data centers are really hard-built facilities with backup power, backup generators. And if I'm correct, maybe Richard can help me with this, none of the area data centers were down during the storm. So even if it was located locally, those are all up and working. And how does that benefit us as a business owner? If I'm in a situation where I'm scrambling to get my servers up, maybe my location is flooding, in a normal scenario, I would pick up the phone and call Verizon or wherever my phone carrier is and say, hey, I need to forward all my calls to my cell phone. But the disadvantage of that is all your calls are now going to one phone. And it's very difficult to handle all of the calls that you're going to get with one phone. In a hosted environment, your system is working. So if I call your business, I call XYZ business, I get an auto attendant, I pick your extension, and now we can forward the individual extensions to cell phones, to other numbers. So you're only getting the calls that you would get, not every single call for the business. You know, in the past, you'd have to invest in a phone system, which is a capital investment. With a hosted system, it's now been transferred to an operating expense. So there are some accounting reasons that that's a benefit, but you also don't have to commit capital to it. So in today's economic environment, what we're finding, when we lay out the case to a business owner, okay, you have 50 employees. If you want to go out and buy a phone system, that's going to be anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000, whether you want to buy a Panasonic or a Cisco. Or we could do a hosted system, and it's going to cost you a little bit less than what you're spending on your phone bill today with no out-of-pocket cost. What would you do? So it becomes a simple decision from an economic standpoint. The last thing I'll talk about before I finish up are call centers. I know most of the people here are probably small businesses and have never thought about having a call center in your business, but I speak to all my customers and prospects, no matter what the size, about call center features, because in a hosted environment, the economics of having call center features are so advantageous that it's almost silly not to look at it. And I'll give an example. I have, we just did an add-on to a shipping and freight company that I work with. They have 7 people in a dispatch group. They were basically handling all the calls that came in by putting people on hold. Hold please, getting all kinds of calls. Well, we put in a hosted call center with queuing, where if all 7 of those people are on the phone, the 8th call that comes in will go in a queue with a message stating that, you know, all our agents are busy and be handled by the first available agent. When the first one hangs up the phone, the system sends the call, so we don't have people losing calls and, you know, not knowing what's going on. Plus, the call center gives you statistics and reporting, so as a manager and a business owner, you can go back and see, okay, you know, here's what's happening in the call center. You know, we have, you know, each day we have 200 calls sitting in queue for 10 minutes each. Maybe we need to hire people. Or, you know, we never have a busy signal. Nobody's going in the queues. Maybe I have too many people sitting there answering calls. And the kicker is that added $140 a month to his bill, which, if anybody knows what call center equipment used to cost, that's incredible. In order to get a call center, he would have probably had to spend $20,000, $25,000 in the past, and now it's a $140 a month feature. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
Okay. Now our panel will entertain questions.
During the storm, we were out of power for 11 days. And of course, you know, what do you do with your neighbors? You sit around and have a fire, drink, and have fun. But we were also talking about, when we were younger, we can never remember power being out for that long of a time. Now, is it something within the way things are built these days, or is it within the structure of the power lines because they're old? I just don't remember the power being out for more than a day.
New Jersey Utilities, this was the greatest single loss of infrastructure that any of them ever experienced. And quite frankly, under their own models, they had anticipated full restoration in 14 days. They actually exceeded that, I believe. You know, obviously there were spot outages after the 12-day period, but by the standard that they used to measure a restoration of power, they were able to do it in 12 days. Also, let me say this to you. The utility companies, just as I spoke to you about having a plan and how we as a government entity have a plan, the utilities have a plan for power restoration. And unfortunately, their restoration plans may not necessarily meet your particular needs. What happened with Sandy was, in the past, when there were spot power outages, elected officials could call in and say, you know, this is Mayor so-and-so, and, you know, I have this neighborhood, and there's a special needs family, and we need to get the power restored. And for minimal outages, they will try to accommodate. They are a public utility. With this particular storm, they immediately went to their plan. which is exactly what the topic of my discussion was. And their plan basically says they have critical facilities that they need to get back online, and following that, they are going to restore it in order that gives them the greatest restoration for the smallest amount of time.
My office is located in the Fairlawn Industrial Park. We never lost power after Sandy. I guess it's simply because there's the substation right behind the Visco there. But how does a business owner choose where to locate a business to minimize the impact or the length of the power loss?
I had a CFO call me from a company headquartered in downtown Manhattan, and he told me that they had a power outage situation and the insurance company, and they had purchased business income insurance and experienced this power outage, and they got a letter back from the insurance company that told them it was excluded because the cause of loss was from flood. So the flood caused the power station to explode and no coverage. He said, how would I have, I'm on a 4th story of a concrete building, why would I buy flood insurance? But here's the answer, is that the underwriters like to hear that kind of stuff, and you probably could buy flood insurance for free. All you got to do is ask. And then you'd have that peril picked up for the off-premise power. So it's also asking the right questions for things that you may think are sort of outside that box, but it'll trigger coverage if there's an issue, just like this particular situation. They never thought that, the flood exclusion in their policy would trigger them not being covered for the off-premise power business income that they bought. So,
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of our event, and I hope it was informative. Everybody had a good time. There is still some cheese and wine and crackers and some soda, so feel free to mingle a little bit. And again, drive home safely. Thank you for coming. Thank you to our panel for taking their time out and being a part of the course for Maria.